Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Language of Leadership. I'm your host, Chuck Marting, and I am here with a man that I have great respect and admiration for, that has been inspirational to me in my journey as a leader. And I am honored to have Mr. Cliff Ravenscraft here with us. Cliff, thank you for being here.
Chuck, I am super excited to be here, and I'm honored to be on your podcast.
Well, and what people probably don't know is that I probably wouldn't be doing podcasting if it wasn't for you and your motivation for me to just do it.
I like that you called it motivation.
Yeah,
That was a fun conversation.
yeah, it was a reality check. It was really for me. Um, I haven't talked about that on this podcast, but I'm not scared to share that with anybody. But um, the first time I had met you was at a conference in Franklin, back in it was Nashville, and we went to Ray Edwards, his
Copywriting
copywriting
Academy Live.
academy, and you were there. And I had been following you for a while, and I really liked a lot of the things that I heard on your podcast and some of the things that you did. And I had mentioned to Stacy that you're one of the people that I wanted to meet, and you just had a gaggle of people around you. Every time I went out, there was just so many people that were engaged with you. And so the last time I walked out there and you just had a lot of people there, and I told Stacy, I said, I'll just get with him some other time. And she just grabbed me by the hand and said, no, you're going to meet Cliff. And we went and stood in line. And next thing I know, she's telling you about how I've been putting off doing a podcast for almost a year and a half, 2 years, and what your advice would be. And that's how we first started our conversation.
It was a fun conversation. I remember it as if it just happened yesterday. I remember exactly where you and Stacy each were standing and stuff like that. And I said, let me ask you this: do you really want to do this podcast? Because if you really want to do this podcast and you want my advice on how to get started and overcome any of the obstacles of the procrastination, I said, I'll tell you what, you got to tell me you're serious, because after this conversation, you will not be able to not put out this podcast. And all I did was I used some techniques that I learned from Tony Robbins called getting leverage. So I just asked you a series of questions to get at the heart of what really motivates you already. Who are you as a person? What's most important about life? What are some of the most life and death situations you've ever faced or experienced? And once I figured out what your values were, just through a series of questions, I then tied all of that to, I basically said, you not creating a podcast means this. And I made that feel incredibly, unbearably painful for you. And you went home and created a podcast.
Yeah, you made an impact that I wasn't expecting. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. Which also led to one of the reasons why I've asked for you to be on the podcast, is that I had read about coaching and masterminds through Think and Grow Rich. And I had told Stacy before we had even went to that one of the things that I wanted to do is that I felt it was important on my leadership journey to become a member of a mastermind, because of all the leaders and people that I had read that had done that and the success they'd had because of that. And then after having that experience with you that you just talked about, I sought you out the next day about a mastermind. And I didn't know at that time that you had a mastermind, and you said, well, I've got one. And I applied for it right then and there and got it to you. And I had joined the Next Level Mastermind, and I can tell you as a new leader, the power that group had. And I think you, as the leader of this, having seen me at the beginning and then where I went with it, how it changed me. I think that knowledge and that experience is something that I have to have you share with other people, how that can impact leaders and make them better leaders, especially right now with everything that we've experienced with COVID. We have leaders that I have come across, and I'm sure that you have, that are going either back into the workplace or they're just starting into the workplace. And it's a different environment now, a different way of dealing with people. You have some people that want to work from home. You have other people that are there. You have people that are making demands of leaders now. Leaders are having to show their worth more now than they ever did before because of some of the entitlement that some of the teams have come to, saying, this is what I want to do, and what are you going to do about it, type of thing. And I don't know, in your experience, Cliff, if you've seen too many leaders that they get put in that position, they go, so here's the manual. This is how you become a leader. This is how you teach people. I didn't experience that, but I got that from my involvement with you in the mastermind. So could you touch on that a little bit?
Sure. So the idea is, how does one expand as a leader? And I don't think there is a manual for this. I wish there were, but the thing is it's a unique journey for each individual person. And I think that's what you found valuable through your experience. There wasn't a cookie cutter thing. It's like, there is no one program, one framework that really speaks to Chuck Martin. Chuck's a unique individual with unique passions, unique beliefs, unique experiences of life, and uh, there's just no one book that has all your strengths, all of your weaknesses all figured out in a customized plan on how to make you an effective leader. No book can do that. But meeting together with a group of like-minded people who are living life at the level that you're committed to living to, as a leader, you want to consistently grow. Never ending personal and professional growth is a desire. You put yourself in a group like that where everyone is committed to your success, and where every other group and you are committed to the success of every other person in that group. Some really interesting things happen. In this group, people start to share what they believe, what their experiences are. So there have been a number of times in our mastermind group. You were in the group for 4 years, is that right?
3 years.
3
3 years.
years.
Mhm.
So you were in the group for 3 years. So over the 3 years, you will easily recall there were times when somebody else was coming in. We'll take you and I out of the equation, but somebody else comes to a hot seat, because this is how mastermind groups work, right?
Yeah.
And somebody comes to the group and they say, "Oh my gosh, the sky has fallen. This incredibly terrible experience has just befallen me. And this is how I blew up. This is how angry and upset I am. And, I just don't see any way around this. And I just want to come here and vent and get some, oh, it's going to be okay kind of vibes, because that's my experience of life." Whereas in a group like this, they're like, whoa, wait a second. Number one, let's talk about, is the sky really falling? Is this really the worst thing that could happen? Did people really make you angry? And all we're doing is asking questions. Is it true that there's nothing you can do? Is there a different way of seeing this? And it's like, oh, wait a second. See, what I'm talking about here is that, and it goes to this Jim Rohn quote. Jim Rohn was a motivational speaker, personal and professional development guy. And he was known to have said, you are the average of the 5 people you spent the most time with.
Mhm.
Tony Robbins was one of his students, by the way. And I think most people recognize the name Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins says this. He says, your life will be the direct reflection of the expectations of your peer group. So outside of the mastermind, it's the typical kind of culture that we live in when you've had a really bad day and you want to really just kind of unwind and release some of that pressure and just get it's going to be okay pat on the back from some friends. That's typically what we've got through life, and it's been reinforced that this is the way we do things. That that's what friendship is all about. And in a mastermind group, they're like, wait a second, it's okay if you want to have that attitude and that perspective of life, but is there another way of seeing this? Can we step back from the emotions of this? Can we step back from our personal story? And is it possible to see this from a different perspective? And just questioning that belief system, questioning that way of thinking, questioning those response. And then all of a sudden it's like, wow, okay, so maybe. And then by the end of the meeting, all of the emotion has been discharged from the situation. It's like, okay, well, maybe you guys are right. Chuck, how many times have you witnessed that in 3 years where somebody comes in with this and by the end of the meeting, it's like, oh my gosh, I have some hope. I've got some ideas of like 2 or 3 different things I could do. And this, oh my gosh, there's a way forward.
I did. And I think there's something else that that I learned was that in a mastermind, if you think you're going to come in and sugarcoat something, when these guys start to know who you are, you've got another thing coming, because you're going to get called out. I mean, there was a couple of times that I've been called out because I said something and you're like, you're full of crap. There's something more that you're not saying. And, it gets uncomfortable, but this is the perspective that a leader needs from, in lack of better terms, an executive board that you're coming to, that these people they have an impact in your life and an involvement in it, and they get to know you pretty intimately, and where there's nothing held back. And you need that sometimes as a leader, for somebody to come to you and say, no, 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 we're not going down that road. This is what you're missing. So you're right. There's power in this group. There's power in what's going on in there.
There is, and you said something is, where does the leader turn to for this kind of feedback? And that's what we're looking at. I want honest feedback. And I actually want critique. And you
Mhm.
might even use the phrase and modify that to, I do want criticism. I want constructive criticism and critique of how I'm experiencing this situation, what I'm actually doing as a leader. But here's the interesting thing. I want to do it where the people are speaking authentically and honestly. I want to
Mhm.
make sure that they're speaking from experience, not just some made up kind of mumbo jumbo. They're actually speaking from their own experience. I want to actually receive this criticism, this constructive feedback from people who love me and who are committed to my success and have no ulterior motives. This is why, and many times when we think about leaders, you're not going to be able to get this constructive feedback without any ties to the outcomes from those you report to as a leader, the people who are under your leadership. You're not going to get it from probably your spouse, because your spouse, there's other things that are at stake in that relationship. And even if you're a leader that actually reports to somebody up higher up in your organization, you may not go to them with some of the more hidden beliefs and feelings and emotions that you're dealing with, because you need to protect some sort of rapport, or it's
Your image.
your image. Yeah, whatever that is. And all of that's normal. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we all have roles to play, and we want to make sure that we are putting out the right image for all of the people we interact with to make that interact and work well together. And so what happens in a mastermind group is, this is a group of people that have no direct tie to whether or not you follow their advice or not. So in a mastermind group, we got so and so in the group here, and he's got this. All we're committed to is helping this guy succeed in life, personally and professionally, and maybe in some in instances even spiritually. So we are genuinely concerned for the success of this individual. That's the only thing that's at our heart. If he takes our advice, or she, because we've got women in our groups as well.
Mhm.
If they take our advice, great. If they don't take our advice, it's going to just be more valuable learning lessons. Eventually, one way or another, they'll learn the important life principles here, but at least we're going to open up the idea that you need to be activating your reticular activating system so that you can be aware that there's something going on beyond what you're currently focused on. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the power here is that fact that there is this group of people who love you, who are committed to your success, who can speak authentically and sometimes very directly into your life, but always and never without love being at the center of it.
Yeah. There was a quote, and I don't even know if you remember saying this because I had to go back and look at it, and it came from Rich Litvin, the author of The Prosperous Coach. And what I thought was interesting is that you broke it down so we'd understand it, but I had wrote it down. I had to go find it because I remembered it and I wanted to. So, but what that quote was that's just stuck with me that I had to write down, Cliff, was when a leader sees the world differently, they show up differently and they create results that looked impossible a moment before. That's where the miracle's at.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Because I remember going into the mastermind and having something that was really weighing me down,
Mm-hmm.
and then presenting it and having everybody else's perspective. It's that being inside the bottle and not being able to read the label on the outside. And that quote was so powerful because it's true. What I thought was impossible an hour before this meeting, I'm now walking out going, man, I can do this. Now I know how to do this where I didn't know before.
Yeah, I'll never forget my first experience of that. I'm in a mastermind group called the Green Room Mastermind. The folks that are in that is Pat Flynn from smartpassiveincome.com, Leslie Samuel from Become a Blogger and the biology stuff that he does on YouTube, Michael Stelzner from Social Media Marketing World, Ray Edwards, copywriter extraordinaire, and Mark Mason from Texas Instruments, and also Late Night Internet Marketing. So I've been meeting with these guys every week since October 2010, Chuck.
Wow. Holy
It was
cow, man.
it was in November. I'm sorry. It was in November 2011, I believe. I went to the mastermind group and said, "Guys, I've been invited to go speak on a cruise with Dan Miller, author of 48 Days to the Work You Love." Now, the thing is, though, is I have to pay for my own ticket to get there, and it's a Valentine's Day cruise. Now, here's the situation. I need to come up with a lot of money because Stephanie does not want to hire childcare for our 3 children. And I'm sitting here looking at all of the expenses to all of this, and I just don't know how I'm going to pull this off. So I called up Dan, and I'm embarrassed to say that I called him, and I said my wife suggested that I go on this cruise alone because she doesn't want to come without the children. And when I think about the cost right now, when it comes to taking all 5 of us to Florida, then on a 7-day cruise, that's a bit more than I had bargained for. What do you think if I come alone? He told me he said, I think that's a terrible idea, Cliff. This is happening over the week of Valentine's Day. I don't think that's going to reflect well on the story of
Not
your
good.
brand. And I said, you know what, Dan? No worries. I will be there with my wife. And if it's okay with you, I'm bringing all 3 of my kids. I'll see you in February. Problem is, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off. I did the math. I needed $16,000 above and beyond what I was currently generating because I was making all of my money from one-on-one coaching at the time. And I think at the time I was making about $300 an hour. And so for me not to do coaching for 7 days plus 2 days before the cruise and 2 days after the cruise, that's a lot of lost income.
Yeah.
And I had very little other streams of income. So I went to my mastermind group and I said, guys, here's the situation. I've got about 3 months, December, January, February. I got 3 months to come up with a method of generating $16,000 above and beyond what I normally would make over the next 3 months because I need that money already. I need this by this date so that that 16,000 will cover everything else that is related to this cost. That's the cost of a family of five going on the cruise, the travel for a family of five, the days off of work of, that's a total of 10 days with no income producing one-on-one coaching. 16,000 is what I need. How on earth do I do this? Because I'm already maxed out how many hours I'm coaching. I can't double or triple the amount of hours I'm coaching. And it just have you thought about doing a 4-week group coaching program? And what if you just had 20 people go through a 4-week coaching program where each person paid $800? And I'm like, how would I do that? Well, here's something. And Pat said, here's a program that I was doing. And a couple hot seats back, you guys helped me figure out the right webinar solution and you helped me figure out the right forum solution. The thing is I've got this entire thing mapped out. I even hired an artist to create the weekly course outlines and everything. Turns out that something happened with the guy that I was partnering with, and we decided to just toss it to the side. Hey, Cliff, how about I give you all of my resources and all my research? I can tell you, here's the platform you should use for your weekly group coaching calls on Fridays. Here's the discussion forum you should use. And here's the course outline that I had designed in this format over here. Just take my logo out, put your logo in, take my course assignments out and put your course assignments in. Just do that and go create a sales page and start selling this thing. In 1 hour, I had the entire solution to what I needed. And on the day we left for that cruise, I had made $16,000.
That's incredible. That's incredible.
Oh, by the way, I had never done group coaching prior to that. I had only done one-on-one. I then stopped for the time. I had stopped doing all one-on-one podcast coaching back in the day, and I only did podcasting A to Z. I started doing that 4 times a year, 20 students per thing. However, after the second one, I took the rate from $800 to $2,000 a student. So I made $40,000 each month, and I did it 4 times a year, podcasting A to Z. And then when it came time to build our house, we just bumped it up to 6 out of the year. I took the limit of 20 students off, made somewhere between $60,000 to $80,000 every other month, and built an entire house from all the extra income. That podcasting A to Z course has generated well over $1 million in revenue, all because I needed $16,000 and had no idea how I was going to come up with it.
So that's the power of going to a group like that and having those leaders help you in accomplishing what you thought wasn't possible at first. They showed you that it very much so was possible, and you achieved it.
Yeah. And here's what I want people to hear, because I don't want you to think that I was just handed everything that was necessary.
No.
Really, all that was necessary was the thought of doing a group coaching. Why don't you get 20 people to pay you $800? That's your 16,000. Boom, we got that solved. What are you going to give them in return for for their $800 investment? A 4-week group coaching program. By the way, here's the thing: you could actually give video tutorial assignments, a couple each week, and you give them access to ask you questions throughout the week. And then at the end of each week, for 4 weeks, you do a group coaching call. Now, if I had nothing other than those ideas, I could have still created everything I created. It was just a bonus that I didn't have to think about what discussion forum to use, what software solution to use for my webinars, and I didn't have to go out and create my own beautified weekly course outline.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So you have leaders that are new, that are put in these positions that may feel that they have an impassable task, like what you just said. They have something that the company has told them, you need to reach this point with this group of people. And now they're trying to figure it out. How do they go to a mastermind to accomplish those things? Do you just go in and start talking to the mastermind about, this is what the issue is, this is what perspective I have? How does that play out in a mastermind so people understand that? Because I've just come to you with my problem. I
Yep.
obviously don't feel comfortable enough going to my team yet, because I don't want them to know that I don't know what to do, because I'm their leader.
Yep.
So I'm coming to you as a group of leaders saying, all right, here it is. So can you kind of lay out how that would work so that I would be able to go back to my team and implement this and be able to accomplish the things that we're wanting to accomplish?
Absolutely. And I can even give you a movie illustration to support it.
Awesome.
So the scenario here, the problem that you're facing is, you just said it. I don't want to go to my team or my whatever leadership and tell them I don't know how to do this. But the reality is I don't know how to do this. What I just told you, I have no idea. I have no ideas coming to me. I have no inspiration, no thoughts of how I can come up with $16,000. That's why I'm here to ask you this, right? So I had no understanding of how this would be possible. I
Mhm.
just I just know that I committed to it, and I know that I'm going to do it, but I don't have any of the ideas. So um, that's the scenario. Now, what happens is, if you, what was the movie about the moon mission? Was it
Apollo 13?
Apollo 13? Yes. So there was this place where they had an issue in the movie. It's shown beautifully, that just the story of how this happens. You've got three guys that are in this lunar module, which was only designed for two people, and the reason why is because the main ship where they were, the carbon dioxide thing, was messed up or what. There was some kind of it. Actually, no, it wasn't the carbon. There was something happened, and they had to all put all three of them into this module. But it was only designed to be able to take out enough carbon dioxide for two human beings, but there are three in there. Now, the situation was, they were able to get the carbon monoxide filters or scrubbers or whatever from the main unit, but the interface was different because they're two different units. So they have filters that would work, but they're not designed to fit the module that these three men are in.
Mhm.
So nobody there has an idea, all in their own way of thinking, with what study materials they've studied, what little side projects they've been working on in the workshop at home, and all this other stuff. Everybody's got their own limitation of their own experience, their own education, their own skills and areas of expertise, and all this other stuff. So each individual engineer at NASA is limited to their own insight on their own. But what happens if you watch Apollo 13, what they did is they gathered all of those engineers from NASA, put them in a room, and there's this table in this room. And then all of a sudden the scene opens up, a guy walks in with a box. And he says, "Guys, this is the problem. We have three men in a unit designed for two. Not enough carbon dioxide is being taken out. We do have extra carbon dioxide or whatever filters, but they're from this unit. So I need you guys, you got 1 hour to figure out how to put a square peg in a round hole. And by the way, everything that these guys have accessible to them as far as tools is in this little box." And they dumped it out. Now, figure it out, and then I need you to show me how to teach them how to do it. So basically, these guys were in this room, and that was the presentation. So now here's the presented problem. We have this problem. This is what's going on. These are the challenges. These are the seeming limitations, all of this stuff. Here's the desired outcome that I want. Now go to town and see if you guys can work together. And so one guy says, "Hey, what about if we do this?" And this guy says, "No, I don't think that'll work. But that gets me thinking about, have you thought about also adding this?" Well, wait a second. If we do that and this, and then do this, and so all of these guys together are able to come up to a plan. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, based upon everything that they have available that was on this table that poured out in front of us, here are step-by-step instructions that's going to save their life. That's what happens in the mastermind group. So in essence, I have a problem. I go to the group and I just talk for about 5, 10, 15 minutes and say, "Hey, here is all the background detail about the obstacle or challenge that I'm currently facing. Here's my desired outcome. Here is my current perception of what's possible. And here's my current perception of all of the obstacles that stand in my way. Now, what happens is I stop and ask, does anybody have any clarifying questions, or does anybody have any wisdom or advice to share with me? And then people are asking some more questions. Well, have you thought about this? And hey, can you clarify? Is this actually available to you, or is this available to you? And and then all of a sudden, people go to town. And what happens is the power of the mastermind. It's even a biblical principle. Wherever two or more are gathered in the spirit of perfect harmony, or quote unquote, in my name, there I am in their midst.
Mm.
And anything they ask for will be given to them. And so, Chuck, I know that I can say this to you, and I know that I'm outing myself as a little woo woo here in your podcast. But did you or did you not see over the course of 3 years in the Next Level Mastermind some very metaphysical insights come in? It's like, how did we go from here to here in one meeting?
That's the beautiful thing about this, is experiencing that, and even knowing that that could even happen.
Yeah.
You know, I know the power of this and why it has been so powerful for other men. That's why almost every successful leader that you've ever come across, and I know that you've coached a lot of successful leaders, some that you probably can't even divulge because of confidentiality, but I know that each one of them have seen the power that belonging to a group like this brings, and has led to their success and more.
Yeah. And even if we take away the metaphysical, what happens when minds come together in a spirit of perfect harmony, Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich says there is a mastermind that then you tap into that is beyond the individual minds that are included in the group. So, and again, that is a very metaphysical kind of like woo-woo thing, but it's a real thing. But even if you're not into that, here are the other things that you get. In a mastermind group, you have every single person in the group, if you're in the right group, is reading books, taking courses, going to conferences, working with coaches. So they're consistently increasing their education all the time. They're learning new things, listening to podcasts. I mean, they're just constantly learning new stuff. Now, if there are 6 people in your group and you're one of 6, the other 5 people, I can promise you there's no way you could read all of the books that all other 5 people in the groups are reading, in the group are reading. So those are insights those people have that you currently don't have access to because you haven't yet read all of those books, and you may never read all of those books.
Yeah.
But you come to the group and you share this thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I just read this in a book last week. Or, hey, I've got a book that I read a couple of years ago that talks about this. And here's just the one insight from that book you need to know. Let me read this to you. And they pull up the quote that's highlighted and bookmarked, and they just read it to you. And then all of a sudden, light bulb goes off. You have no need to read that book. You don't have to spend the 12 or 14 hours to read the whole book. In 4 minutes, you have the deepest, most profound shift in the way that you see the world from that one book that you have never read and might never read.
Wow.
You have access, unlimited access to all of the education of every other member in the group. But also, it's not just their education, it's their experience. Everything they've ever done, personally or professionally, as a hobby or whatever. So, for example, you might come to me and say, "Hey, Cliff, I'm trying to figure out how could I do this?" And it's a very geeky technical software thing. And it's like, "Oh gosh, dude, all you need is this PHP code." In fact, I spent probably about 7 hours on that 3 years ago to solve that pesky thing. And you know what? I actually have a text expander where it's here. I'll tell you what, I'm going to send you an email, and I'm just going to type this in. Boom, boom, boom. Here's 17 lines of code. You just copy this and paste it into this file. Problem solved. That's experience.
Well, it's powerful because there's been many times that I've come to the group, or I've come to you or somebody else. And what was really neat was these guys are thinking about what you just brought into that meeting and what your issue is and what your problem was perceived to be. And we used Voxer, and there's some people that use WhatsApp. I'd get a Voxer message, "Hey, Chuck, I was just thinking about this. Try this." Or, "Chuck, just checking in on you. Did you follow through with what we talked about?" Those little things of encouragement throughout the week after I just brought something to you means so much to somebody who is trying to go into a new area or try something new. It gives them the confidence that not only that I can do it, but I got people that are supporting me that if I can't get it done, I can call them real quick.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And they'll, because they have this experience, like what would take you all afternoon to figure out, hey, why don't we just get on a Zoom call, share screen, and I'll walk you through it. I'll just like, okay, click that, click that. Okay, scroll up, click that little button there. Yep, boom. Now all you have to do is drag that over, boom, hit save, you're done. And
Yeah.
that literally takes 10 minutes for me or maybe somebody else in the group. And that, by the way, when I first learned that, it was about 3 to 5 or maybe even 2 or 3 days of research on how to do that.
I think the proof is in the pudding, especially when you're just talking a little bit ago about how long 12 years in a mastermind with the same group of key guys that meet every week.
Every week for 12 years.
And how much impact has that had not only in your life, but in the lives of those guys in that room?
It cannot be measured. This is what Napoleon Hill says about mastermind groups, your participation in a mastermind group in Think and Grow Rich. He says, in a healthy mastermind group alliance where everyone is in a spirit of perfect harmony, where each one is committed to the success of every other person in the group, he says, you will, not you may, you will accomplish more in 1 year in a healthy mastermind group alliance than you could dream of experiencing in a lifetime on your own.
And I think that's powerful with a lot of people with the great resignation of things, people looking at doing new things and trying new things. You don't necessarily need a new degree or having to go, and not that I'm discounting any of that stuff, but the education and the experience that I have, I don't think I could put a price on or a degree to. It was that powerful for me in my experience.
Yeah. Well, here's what I can tell you right now, Chuck, is I'll give you a perfect example of this. What if I decided to uh, what if I decided to create a local gathering of people and stuff like that, and I wanted to do something that is absolutely going to impress the socks off of people when it comes to one of my hosted barbecues. I've never owned a smoker. I've never touched a smoker. I know nothing about smoking. I know nothing about anything. But here's what I know. I never intend to ever read a book about smoking meats. I never intend to take a course on smoking meats. I never intend to go to a conference on meat smoking. I don't even plan to watch a single YouTube video on how to smoke meats. But here's what I can guarantee you. I could start a little community gathering, and next summer or even next month, you know what? How about for a fall bash, I'm going to host a pig roast, and we're going to have roasted pig, but we're also going to have brisket, and we're going to have barbecue chicken, and it will be the absolute best roasted pig, brisket, and barbecue chicken you've ever had in your life. I guarantee it. Now, could I pull that off next month, Chuck? I could, because all I have to do is talk to my friend Chuck. And Chuck's going to say, go buy this smoker. And Chuck's going to say, go buy this fuel for your smoker. Now, here's what you're going to do. You're going to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and you're going to put this fuel source in. You're going to get it started. Around 4:30 in the morning, you're going to stoke that up a little bit. You're going to add this much more fuel, and then you're going to set the thing to this setting, and you're going to open up the damper this much. Then, Cliff, you will have already prepared and soaked your meat in this brining or whatever the thing is, and here's your formula for your thing. Dude, you would have given in 1 or 2 hours, you could give me step-by-step instructions. The first time I've ever operated a smoker, I could blow everyone's mind. I could do that, couldn't I? Why?
Yes, you could.
Because I have access to Chuck Marting.
Now you're diming me off. I'm going to have to do a barbecue episode. So that's why I was smiling when you started doing that. I knew where you were going. Oh, man.
See, the thing is I don't need to go get a degree. I don't need to get certified. I don't need to start competitions. All I need is my friend. I just need an hour to 2 hours of Chuck Marting's time and attention. And I just need to make sure that I am documenting step by step everything Chuck would do if he was preparing for his next competition.
Yeah. I mean, that you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
So why should, and I will rag on education a little bit. Why would I invest weeks and weeks or months and months or years and years in another degree when I could just tap into all of that from my friend Chuck?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the most powerful thing that leaders today need to understand. There are people like yourself. There are people like Dan Miller. There's people, that are out there that have put these programs together, that have put their experiences together to help people get to that level that they want to be at when it comes to this. And so when you have somebody that says, oh, you're going to have to go and do this and this, okay, not necessarily. If you have a college class that's over here and they're saying you can do this in 4 years, like you're saying, why spend 4 years doing something like this when I can spend 2 hours over here?
Yeah. I don't need to be an expert, credible source on this. I just need to get, I need an awesome tasting pork roast. I need an awesome tasting brisket and some awesome tasting chicken for one event. And I have access to the king of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm a flight away.
Exactly. And so, I could just bring you in.
Yeah.
So check this out. So what we just talked about is we talked about the education that I have access to in the mastermind group, the experience of everyone else in the mastermind group, but also there's the resources, like for example, I have a friend named Leslie Samuel. He's in the Green Room Mastermind. And back in the day when I was doing my podcasting A to Z, I was thinking about putting it, this is before we had all the learning management systems like Thinkific and Kajabi and all the other Coursera software that makes it easy to put online courses into software. So back in the day, we were all hand coding this stuff into WordPress. And I had one of the ugliest setups you could possibly imagine. It worked. It was functional. It was incredibly profitable. And I served my clients incredibly well. But my friend Leslie Samuel, he had this beautiful looking membership program. And I mean, it was gorgeous. And he was showing me, he says, hey, Cliff, why don't you do this? And I said, yeah, I just do not have the time, my friend. I know I have the skill set to do that. It's just not a priority. He goes, you know what? I have a virtual assistant that I pay 40 hours a week. I'm currently only using her for probably 15 to 20 hours a week. She's got a half a week every week that I am paying her for that she has nothing to do. I want to give you 20 hours a week of my virtual assistant at no charge. She is going to work for you for the next several weeks to design all of the layout and fix everything to make it beautiful. That's what we call shared resources. So, and I can tell you story and story and story of where people is like, you know what? Hey, it seems to me like you want to have some transcripts of those 15 video files from your course. Yeah, it's like, so I'll tell you what, I have an access to an auto program. And if you don't want to go get a subscription to it, why don't you just Dropbox the files and I will run them through Otter and I'll download the PDFs or Word documents or text documents, however you want it, and I'll transcribe them all for you and put all of those transcripts right into the Dropbox for you. Boom. That's done. You don't even have to go figure out how to do transcription service, anything. It's like that's just what Mastermind members do. It's like, dude, if you just put them in this Dropbox folder, it'd take me 5 minutes, and tomorrow morning you'll have transcripts for all 15 of your videos for your course.
Wow.
That's shared resources. But it's not just education. It's not just experience. It's not just resources. By the way, also skills, talents, and abilities.
Yeah.
So there are some things, Chuck, that you and I, we're just not going to figure out. I don't know about you, but I'm not going to be playing guitar anytime soon. I'm certainly not going to be singing on key anytime soon. There are some talents that I don't have. But you know what? And of course, I'm using things, but related to business, there's some talents I don't have. Copywriting is something that I'm competent in, right? Competent. That means I can get by. I can put together a sales page. And I can tell you, here's where it comes to talent. This isn't just education and experience. This is a gift, a talent. You ever heard of a guy named Ray Edwards? We talked about him earlier.
Oh,
he
yeah.
is a copywriting expert. He happens to
He's
be
a
in the Green Room
guru.
Mastermind.
Yeah.
So I'll never forget the day. And like, hey, what do you think about my sales page? He goes, Cliff, it's pretty decent. I said, how would you change it? He says, well, let's schedule a call. So we get on a call and we rewrite the entire sales page in a single 1 hour call. And of course, I recorded it, and everything he said to put in there and swipe out and change and reorder and delete all of this, I did every single thing he said. By the end of it, I had a $50,000 professional copywritten sales page, by the way, that then generated over $1 million.
Wow.
So all of that's just access to his gift, his talent, his skill. So shared experiences, shared educations, shared skills, talents, and abilities, shared resources. But what about shared influence?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, do you know anybody that I could talk to? Is there anything that you can think of that will help me get the word out about this? Well, gosh, I happen to be connected with so and so, and he happens to have a passion for helping people with this. I can help you, maybe get you listed as a guest on his podcast.
Wow.
Well, now you just got access to another 150,000 people you didn't have access to before you asked that call. Because I have access to that influence.
Yeah.
Maybe I invite you onto my podcast. Here I am on Chuck's podcast. So mastermind groups are incredibly powerful.
Yes, they are. Cliff, I know that we've taken a lot of your time today, but the value that is here is incredible. And I think that it shows leadership that there are outside sources. There's people that are going through similar things, but in different areas that may have experienced what you're experiencing right now, been there, done that type of thing, but they're able to come together and even add to you, like you were explaining. And I think the value in that is just off the charts. I mean, I don't think you can put a price on it. At least I
No,
can't.
no.
And
And the thing is it is the things. There's numerous occasions where you're going to bring something to somebody and they're like, listen, I've been there, done that. Here's what I experienced. This is some valuable feedback. But I don't want to underplay that metaphysical thing where it's like nobody here has ever dealt with that. But let's ask questions. Let's brainstorm this. And dude, the
figure it out.
stuff that can come out of that, unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah. There was times that we may have gone a little bit over what we were going to do for our mastermind that night, but just because you're so focused and involved in that issue, and the thoughts just start coming from everybody, and you just don't want it to stop. But then you have people like yourself who are in charge of this group going, all right, guys,
Let's wrap
we need
this
to bring
up.
it in. So with that being said, I wanted to again thank you for being on the podcast, Cliff. It means a lot. And I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge you and all the things that you do. We touched a little bit on it, but you give of yourself more than a lot of people that I know. And it shows in your leadership and um, how many people seek you out for things. You're on Clubhouse all the time. And I love when you do the Ask Me Anything segments, because I love when I'm not driving or doing my own thing. I always click on that because it's intriguing to me to hear the things that people ask, and then kind of like that mastermind, watching it just kind of grow and come to fruition, and see people, the light bulbs going off, going, hey, yeah, that's right, I can do this or do this or this. I think you have a very special gift God has given you, and the ability to communicate and to make impact on people's lives. And I want to thank you for being cognizant of that and allowing that to happen, and being an example to other people like myself as to not only how to treat people, but how to encourage people and to see them succeed in the things that they want to do. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
It is my sincere pleasure, and it is a gift that I am quite aware of that comes from God. I give him all that glory, and I'm just I feel like I'm living a dream to think that I get to do what I'm doing. I'll admit that I did a lot of things to get me to the place where I'm able to receive these blessings without resistance. There was a lot of limitations in my own mind that I had to get beyond, but oh my gosh, is it worth going through everything to get here? I love what I get to do. Uh, th- Knowing you, Chuck, is among one of my highest pleasures in life, and I'm not just saying that to blow smoke because I'm on your podcast. Because, like I said, I have no experience with smoking anyway. But but seriously, no. What I mean by that, though, is to be able to take somebody who is as successful as you are, and to have the opportunity to come alongside you for 3 years. And I mean, the things that we weathered together is amazing. We both made it through the coronavirus.
Yeah.
Economy globally shut down. Your physical business. I mean, just all of the stuff.
Yeah.
But man, all of the different things that we've been. It's just fun. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to witness your professional career, your professional growth. I use stories of what I've learned from you in my one-on-one coaching and in other people's hot seats still to this day.
Wow.
So everything that we've ever experienced together has always added to my benefit as well.
Thank you. Cliff, I always end my podcast, and I know that you've listened, and I always ask if you or I, or you and someone you haven't seen in quite a while, we're going out to lunch, and we were having our conversation, and you looked at me and you said, Chuck, there's this book you got to read, man. You've got to read this because of the impact it's going to make on you. What book would that be? What
Well,
is it
you
that you
know,
would share with us?
well, you know me. I'm involved in a lot of books.
I've bought a
Think
lot
and
of those books.
Yeah, Think and Grow Rich is a book that if anybody's listening to this and you have not read that book yet, dude, what are you waiting for? You got to read that book. Another book I would say, Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz. It's a must read. And another one that you must read, I believe, it just escaped me as soon as I said that phrase. So Cybernetics. Oh, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by
Mm,
T. Harv Eker.
good one.
It will help you break free from a lot of limiting beliefs about money and wealth in your life. And I want to share one quote from a book that I have not read all the way. It was mentioned in a mastermind group. All right. And I went and downloaded the sample off of Kindle and sent it to my device. I read the introduction, I read a little bit of the first chapter, and there's this one quote that blew my mind. And I'm like, okay, $13 for this book or whatever it was, I'm buying it. So I bought it instantly. By the way, the rest of the book bored me to tears.
Oh
All right.
no.
So here's the value. You don't have to read this book if you don't want to get this insight. Are you ready? The book is called Rest: Why You Get More Done When You Work Less by Alex Sujung Kim Pang. All
Hmm.
right. So here's what it says. When we define ourselves by our work, by our dedication, effectiveness, and willingness to go the extra mile, then it's easy to see rest as the negation of those things.
Hmm.
If your identity of work is yourself, when you cease to work, you cease to exist.
Wow.
It's the danger of not actually enjoying both good work and good rest.
Wow. That's awesome.
People
Well,
out there are afraid to die. And what happens is they've tied too much, especially as leaders, too much of their identity of who am I? What value do I add to the world? What worth do I add to the overall big picture? So much of that identity, so much of that worth is tied to work. And if you actually take time off work to rest and rejuvenate, you actually lose yourself. And this is the most dangerous thing I think leaders are facing today.
wow. Well, Cliff, I want to thank you for being on the podcast, and I am going to have links in the show notes to those books. Also, I'll have links to Cliff and how to get a hold of him, especially if you're looking for coaching or mastermind groups and want to inquire even more on how Cliff could help you with those. I will have that information in there. And like I said, I was part of this experience with Cliff for over 3 years, and um, it was 3 great years, and it was something I really loved and something I enjoyed, and I've taken a lot from. So I hope that this information today has meant a lot to you, and that you'll be able to follow up with Cliff on some of those things. Cliff, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we leave?
Just thanks so much for this opportunity. It has been a tremendous pleasure. If anybody enjoys hearing the way that I talk about things, the Cliff Ravenscraft Show is my main podcast. I have
Yes.
lots of others, but just look for Cliff Ravenscraft and follow the Cliff Ravenscraft Show. I would encourage you to check it out.
Yes. And I'll have links to all that stuff. So, again, thanks for being here. And I'm sure we'll have you on another episode of The Language of Leadership. Take care.
Thank you.